What gets in the way of me seeing reality about my partner?
All right, you guys, we're going to answer that compelling question right after we read a review. And this review is called From Crazy to Sane. And it says, "Thank you so much for this podcast. I literally thought I was going crazy because I didn't know about betrayal trauma. I can't even tell you how thankful I am for this info. Now I'm going to go, or I'm going, excuse me, now I'm going through the pain without feeling crazy. And I cannot imagine what it would be like to be this individual who is like, okay, so this sucks, but it sucks a little bit less because I know that I'm not crazy, and that what I'm feeling is normal. What a validating place, and I'm sure that's going to help accelerate her healing. Will it not, Brandon?
Yeah, you know what they say, when you're going through hell, you just
Keep
keep on
moving.
going. And so when you're crazy, when you're crazy making and not knowing what's up and what's down, it's hard to know what direction is forward. When
Yeah,
you're not crazy, it's still painful. And I really like this review. It's still painful, still
Mhm.
hard, but you're moving forward. You're gonna get
yeah,
through. Just stay the course. So
yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah.
We're excited to jump in, and guys, just want to explain we're having some major technical difficulties today, so please roll with us as we plow through this episode. We're having Wi-Fi issues, we're having Bluetooth issues, and but we're going to do our best to give you guys some good content.
Nothing's
today,
gonna
so.
stop us.
No.
So, um,
So yes, we know our quality may not be great today.
yeah. Um, all right, you guys. So you've seen the Social Dilemma, the
Yes.
documentary on Netflix. I'm actually glad we're talking about this today because I want to promote the Social Dilemma. Like, go watch it if you haven't watched it. It's really
Watch it with your
important.
kids.
Watch it with your kids. It's I think a very, very important thing. But just what's the gist of the show? Yeah, we won't ruin it for them, but what's the gist of the show, you guys?
I don't think, I think it was, for me, it was the reality of I have to be boundaried with the way I'm showing up for social media, for the internet, for all of it, because it's not just me looking for information. It's these app developers, it's the websites, it's social media, it's all these things they know a lot about me, and they're leading me into using more. Like,
Yeah,
hey, Ashlynn, I know you like these shoes, but guess what? Now they're on sale. Here's an
right.
email. And then I click and click, so for me, it was just a wake up call of being boundaried, but also being very aware of um, the reality, I guess, of the impact it has on me.
Right.
And for me, it was different because I'm not on social media, and I have a Facebook page. I actually have an Instagram profile as well, but the only reason I get on Facebook is to use that to log into my Zoom account to download our episodes from Zoom and then post them on the podcast. And I never get on Instagram either. And just understanding some of the calculated and very deliberate um, methods that are used to feed me information that really silos me into my own little world that goes really monochromatic, right? Where
Yes.
I don't have contrast. I don't have any contrary opinions. I don't have contrary points of view. Is that's like disturbing to me because I think that variety is the spice of life, whether that's someone else's opinion politically or what have you. But it also made me think like, wow, I feel really thankful that, and this is tough for Ashlynn to hear too. We've talked about this, that Ashlynn's the one that runs the business on social media, wildly successful is Ashlynn's endeavor, is Ashlynn's effort, but it's provided a bit of a safe haven for me in a lot of ways to not have to deal with anything that exists there. So I feel pretty lucky about that, but it is really disturbing because our kids aren't on social media yet.
Right.
And it makes me think like, geez, like if they really don't understand what social media is, then they're going to have their lunch eaten
Well, and
all
it's
their
everything.
lives.
It wasn't just social media. It's the
Sure.
apps, right? Like the apps draw you in. So you may not be on social media, but you're on the apps.
Well, I mean, that's true.
Yeah.
That's
But
true as well.
let's get to the heat of why we're talking about this.
Well, so Coby, you said a couple things that are really fascinating. I liked the way you described it. You said silos you in, and then you also used the term monochromatic. And so, they talk about with these platforms, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. We all use those. We all use those in our businesses and marketing and things like that. But the goal of those social media platforms is to keep the user on as long as they can. The goal is not to disseminate truth, is to give you the news, it's to keep you on as long as you can. And you think about it, what keeps you on as long as they possibly can? Well, what they do is they validate you.
Mhm.
They validate you over and over, and this confirmation bias thing starts to become very powerful, where it's like, I want to consume something that tells me that I'm right, something that feeds this narrative, this theory I have that I already know is true. So if let's say I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican, I'm going to go down these rabbit holes of Trump hating or Biden hating or whatever, because I already know that. And the more I go down there, the more thoughts and the more beliefs are fed into my mind about what reality is. So it takes my perspective and it completely shapes it. Yeah. And then it silos it and makes it monochromatic, right?
Yeah.
Which is concerning. And this is, and one of the theories is one of the reasons why there's so much division in our country is because people are going down these rabbit holes. They're hanging out in these different silos and thinking the other side or the other perspective is totally asinine,
Mhm.
stupid, crazy, dangerous, whatever, where both camps are doing it. Both sides are going in these areas. Now, how does this apply to recovery and relationships? I see it all the time, and this is why this movie, Social Dilemma, was fascinating to me. Is I can meet with a couple and I can hear a perspective that's very different than the reality that I'm actually viewing in front of me. Let me give you an example. I can run a men's group and they can complain about their wives. And let's say one of them is saying, well, my wife's this way and she's that way. And all the guys are like, she's horrible, she's awful, and she's over the top, and she's controlling, and she's so unhealthy. Well, now you start seeing that you're already feeling pain, you're already feeling difficulty in the relationship. And it's like, well, that must be true. Look how true that is. So now you're viewing her through this lens of this crazy, over the top, controlling person. So as you view her through that lens, what are you going to notice?
All the things that confirm that she's
Confirmation.
crazy. She is controlling. More proof.
There's the proof of it, right? And as you believe that more and more, you're going to treat her as if that's what she is. And there's going to be certain consequences in the relationship. We see it the other side a lot. And that's, my husband, who's a sex addict, is an abuser. He's a pervert. He's a gaslighting manipulator. And that's what he is. Like, he is that. And so you can go to a lot of groups. There's a lot of platforms out there that will take these beliefs and validate you in them, validate it over and over, and drive them home. And the more they drive those beliefs home, the more you start seeing your partner as that, as just this perverted, disgusting, monstrous addict. And as you see him as that, all kinds of consequences start coming. So think about it. If we take a couple where he's viewing her as a crazy, over the top, controlling spouse, and she's viewing him as a disgusting addict, how well is that relationship going to work?
Oh man, that's going to be super hard and super challenging. And again, what just to be super clear, this confirmation bias, meaning these little nuggets that I say, oh, this is another piece of evidence as to why Ashlynn doesn't love me. This is another piece of evidence as to why she's going to leave me. These little bits of evidence confirm what might be a shaky belief, and transform that into like this really strong belief.
Yep.
It's not necessarily founded in truth.
Right. It's not just like a theory. It's like you say, belief. Like you know that's who they are. You know that's what they do. Now I want to throw something past you guys, and I think this is a very important part of this discussion. What if your partner actually is manipulative?
I know. I was like, but what?
Or controlling, or what if that's the
Yeah.
truth? And it's not you gathering the evidence of it. It actually is happening.
Yeah.
Then so how do you know the difference? How do you know when you're falling into this silo versus when actual reality, that's what's happening?
That's a good question. And I think a very real one that's, my goodness, I don't know how to answer that, Brannon. I know we've both experienced it. Like I
totally did.
I know when I've gone or when Coby's gone, and I call them yes men. Like I went to go find my yes men to get confirmation that I am right.
Right. Yeah.
I know who those people are for me when I need them.
Yeah.
So for me, I feel like that's when I know, like, oh, I'm just like seeking validation.
You're seeking that. Yeah.
Yes. Rather than here's this truth. And now what? Maybe, like, I don't know. What's the answer?
No, I really like where you went with that, Ashlynn, because one of the ways to sort this out is through another person's eyes. So you want to get out of your emotional mind with it. You want to get more into your wise mind, logical mind, and look at the evidence of reality. Just what is reality? And so somebody who enjoys feeling important and validating you and kind of using you for their own self-worth, they'll be happy to get you to be like, yeah, thank you. You're validating me so much. Somebody who actually loves you will empathize with your pain, validate you, but also not push you beyond reality. And they might have you take a step back and be like, well, this is actually the only thing that's happened. This is the only reality here. So a good support person will help ground you to reality, but a good support person won't take advantage of the situation for their own need. They will help keep you honest and accountable as to what reality is.
I would say the people who do keep me grounded, they also call me out, or by just even asking a question of like, what am I doing, or what's my part?
Right.
Rather than it's like just one-sided and Coby is the devil, there's much more to the story. And a true friend for me can call that out and make me question and ask myself.
Right.
Yeah, that's been my experience with my sponsor. And I've had a lot of really, really productive, albeit challenging conversations with him over the years on really specific topics. And I'm really thankful that he's in my life, because I can always count on him helping me to consider what Ashlynn's perspective is on this. And he is always going to help me see what my part is in any situation. And he'll speak truth to me. And I think that's a critical piece of recovery for both parties, is having someone like that who will really speak straight, talk straight with you and just say, this is your part and this is their part. And so I think, you know, to answer your question, Brandon, I think having a really good therapist who's not just there to placate, but will be honest with you. And if you are in any way disturbed or frustrated or don't like to hear what your therapist has to say, that's a good thing, in my opinion.
Right.
At least preliminarily, I think that's a good thing. Because part of the job is to give discomfort, right? Is to afflict the comforted. And even if I'm in my own denial, but I also think that it's important that I think one of the things that served us, Brandon, was having Amy as our therapist so that she could hear both sides. She could understand, she could give necessary empathy and validation, but then also be like ultimately committed to the both of us so we could be on the same page.
But so Amy, and any good therapist will be this way. Amy understands a really important reality, and here's what the reality is that each one of you, both of you, have infinite worth and value, and that both of you have pain that is valid. Okay, so that doesn't mean that Amy's going to support either one of you to stick your head in the sand and live in denial or not have boundaries or this. She's not going to do that.
Yeah.
But what you'd feel from a therapist like Amy is, oh my gosh, she loves me. Like there's support there. She believes in me. And because of that, she holds that reality, right?
Yeah.
Now, and so if Ashlynn comes in and says, Coby's he's just, all he is a sick, disgusting pervert with no worth. Amy's going to validate Ashlynn's feelings, but also not support her. Support her in that lack of reality, right? I just want you guys to think about this though. I want to flush this out, like really flush this out.
Yeah.
I'm a partner in pain, right? So let's say I could be either side. I could be the betrayed or the betrayer. I'm a partner in pain, a lot of pain. It's just hard in the marriage. I felt so alone, like nobody understands me and nobody gets it. And, you know, and so I go to a therapist who's supposedly a specialist. I go to a specialist and they just take my pain and completely validate it. In fact, they take it beyond just validating my emotions. They like throw that other person totally under the bus, like just throw them under the bus. Do you see how prone I am to just drinking that in? You see
how easy it would be?
How easy it is to just to sap that in, to just love that, right? And from the professional side, I know I could do that. I know people in pain could come in and I could completely, totally get their business and keep them around for a long time by just validating their pain. Their pain is valid. They need validation in their pain. What they don't need is somebody supporting them to not live in reality. Right? Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, and for me, I hear that and I'm like, okay, if I am going to, let's say, this therapist and I'm getting that validation, but it's leading me further and further into that stuckness.
Yes.
And it may be pushing you towards a decision with, okay, well, now I'm out. Like maybe it is moving you somewhere. But
it's not stuckness. Right? It's moving, maybe it's moving you toward divorce or it's moving you toward a marriage, but it's not just stuck in anger, stuck in sadness, stuck in those emotions, right, Ashlynn?
Yeah. And I think for me, reality allows me to make better decisions. So whether it's a hard reality of like, we do need a separation or we do need, you know, there's things that do need to happen. It's still, it feels different when when reality is accepted. Even for me to accept the fact that I'm thinking about those, like in the past, when we were thinking, okay, we do need, something's not working, we need to get away. We were finding yes men. And so, you know, validating, she is controlling and you do, you know, all these things. There was that we did, I think, feel that stuckness, but the hard reality for me was just accepting that I was going to that place of thinking, maybe I don't want to stay in this relationship. That was a very hard reality, but once I could accept that in my own self, I could start moving forward.
Yes.
And it almost did the opposite for me. I mean, we still chose to do a separation to find our truths and to find more clarity, but it was, I don't know. It was different.
So Ashlynn, I really like what you're talking about and describing, because I just hear all the time, especially from the partner. I went to this 12-step group and it felt so good at first. I just loved it. Like, it was so validating, so good, so good. But now, like, I just feel like we just go and bash on our spouse all the time. And like, everybody's just stuck. And that's the word, is stuck in this emotion. And so, like, a person like that, a partner like that, they're to this place where they realize, oh, that validation and pain felt really good. I liked that. But now I'm not progressing. Now all I'm doing is whining about my partner and staying stuck in whining about my partner. I'm not progressing. And sometimes it's easier to stay stuck and whine about your partner, because then you don't have accountability. It's the work isn't on you. You're waiting for them to change. You're in that victim place. And if you're getting validation that you're not doing anything wrong and you're okay, and then you can stay in that victim place. But you're absolutely right, Ashlynn. After a while, you kind of look at the fruits of what's happening. Okay, I'm going to this group where I'm getting but are things getting better? Am I moving forward? And if you're not, then you might want to really consider not just staying caught up in that confirmation bias, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's just it's an interesting dynamic, because I think it's easy to get in either one and not be sure where you're at, right? Like,
yeah.
But I think I'm in a good spot. But I would just ask yourself that very simple question. When I am talking to my friends, talking to my family, talking to my therapist or my group, whoever, is it about me? Am I taking ownership in my own path of healing? Or is it pointing fingers and waiting? Because I for sure sat in that role for a long time. And it feels just chaotic to sit and blame and do nothing, even though it feels easier.
Right.
Because nothing's changing and you're so out of your control. And so I think for me, finding the reality of, okay, I do have a role in healing my own heart and in our recovery. It's not my fault. I have a role. He cannot fix my heart. I have to fix my heart.
Right.
Once I started to find that hard reality that I did not want, that I didn't think was fair, that I was mad at you about, I at least could get to work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
I could find some sort of, what is the word?
But Ashlynn, what you just said, that's what we take a lot of flack for sometimes. And I want to just speak to it openly and directly. Is like, if we insinuate at all that the partner has a role in healing, it's like, don't you dare blame.
Sure.
Don't you dare put any blame on me for what has been created here. And the reality is we're not blaming. We're not blaming at all for any of the betrayal. But both truths exist. We're not blaming at all for what happened. And what Ashlynn said is true. You still have a role. In fact, you have the biggest role in your own healing, not your partner. You have the biggest role in your own healing. And if you can face that reality, then you have a chance to really move forward. If you get stuck with a therapist who says your partner sucks, they suck, they need to change, then you're going to stay stuck there. I'm passionate about this because I was trained by a therapist who was amazing, so good at taking pain and validating it. I mean, she was like Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube on steroids, just like validating it to this degree where it was like, oh my gosh, yeah, they are horrible. They suck. They're awful. They're awful, awful. And what I need to do is punish them and punish them for how horrible they are. And it was interesting because you'd think, you'd look at this and you'd think, well, I watched her practice. I watched her destroy families and destroy like individuals in their recovery, like just feed anger and blame and disconnection. And that was the outcomes of her work. Yet, this is what's so fascinating. Her practice was so full. She was overrun with clients. So that's interesting. The outcomes of what she's doing are horrible. People are suffering and struggling, yet her practice is so full. All she has to do is validate the pain and she'll get clients. That's all people want. They want that validation. But in the end, what are the outcomes? Right?
Right. Because for someone, whether or not, your story doesn't have to be you stay together and that means that you've done it right. It can be that you separate and you divorce and that's your happy. The difference is that the success of healing is there for both parties. And it's interesting because I heard you describing what more of the betrayed feels like, right? Of like, how is this my fault? And I'll feel better when you feel better. But the truth is, it's a hard reality for the betrayer as well, because often I hear it all the time. And I know you do too. And I know you do, of like, well, she's stuck. And if she would just get better, then I would get better. And we could move on and da, 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 da. And it's like, stay in your
I'll
own
tell you,
lane.
I'll tell you what, Ashlynn, I work with as many of the betrayers who play victims to their spouse and stay stuck as I do for the betrayed. So like they just think that, well, if my spouse was easier or better or whatever, my addiction would go away, life would be better. You play the biggest role in your own healing. You are responsible and accountable for your own healing. So if you're looking for validation, then if you're looking just for validation, then a good therapist won't give you just that. They'll give you more than that. Right?
Yeah. Well, and I hope that's what the podcast is for most of our listeners, is just some validation. Like, one, you're probably pretty normal if you're experiencing or have experiencing, what we're talking about. But then we encourage you on every episode to go and now do something.
Yes.
Right. We
Yeah.
never just want you to stay and come back next week and do nothing in between.
Yes.
It's do your work. And we got some feedback over the weekend from some of those who have invested with us in our online programs. And it was really neat to hear their feedback. And one of them was saying, I already knew that you guys could validate and understand my pain, but then you gave me something, what do I do with it?
Yes, that's what we try to do.
Right. And so to see that from people who are in all different circumstances, this gal was in the Middle East. So she doesn't have the opportunity like we've had to go to a therapist like you and say, I need help. And so I feel like that's what we're looking for. Get your validation here, get your education, and now what?
Yes. Yes.
There's been an interesting word that has just repeatedly gone through my head when I hear the word stuck, and that is stretch. And what I mean by that is if you feel, if you're in a place where you feel stuck, or if you're in a place where you feel like you are validated, but there isn't that additional step that your sponsor, that your therapist is giving you to stretch you, to own your own part, to stretch you to grow beyond where you are. And even if you've already gone down the road of understanding what your role is, despite how betrayed you are and how it's not your like the betrayal is not your responsibility, you're still in a position where you must be willing to stretch to heal. So if you are not painfully so being stretched, if you're not in discomfort because of what you have to do to stretch internally, emotionally, mentally, then you're spinning your wheels and you're going to stay stuck.
Yep.
So being willing and having the expectation to stretch is, to me, the like, have validation, but be certain that the expectation is from your coach, your therapist, whomever, to stretch you to grow beyond the situation that you're in.
Yeah.
Yep. Love it.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ashlynn.
I was just going to say one little thing. It's, I'm going to do a reverse. So I mean, let's say we're in a relationship where we are really trying to stay in our own lane and work, right?
Okay.
On the relationship in general, as
Okay.
our partnership. Okay. It's so important. The same idea that we're talking about, to start seeing what we want to see, right? So I'm not going to ignore crappy behavior, but I'm definitely going to point out the good stuff, because that stuff adds up and matters. And when I get stuck in a place of, man, like, Coby's this, and this, that's all I see. But if I don't notice these other little things that he's also doing that are really good, these like totally outweigh these, and it doesn't add up. So for me, it's like a reality check, if not daily, of like, where are we at? Are we both, are we showing up? Are we choosing to honor each other? Are we showing up as partners in parenting and in all these little roles that we play in life? That stuff adds up. And if we aren't recognizing it, we miss it.
Right. I'll give a personal example. So I got home from, I was on a trip last night and I got home. And when I got home, my wife picked me up from the airport and she like smiled at me. It didn't really give me a hug, and like hopped in the car and like we drove home. And I was kind of like, oh, well, good to see you too, But I know my wife, right? So then, so later that night, kids go to bed and she just like can't wait to talk to me. She can't wait to tell me how her weekend was and like what was going on and the things that she'd learned. And so like she couldn't wait to get the kids to bed because she couldn't wait to talk to me. Now, think about it. If I would have taken that snub that she didn't hug me and like, well, see, she doesn't like me. She's mean. She's this, she's that. I start this narrative filling in all the gaps. Then when she's ready to talk to me at night, when the kids go to bed, I'm already so far gone in my own head, knowing who she is and that she's going to reject me and how I can't appreciate how much she actually really wanted to connect to me last night. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
So you can see it playing itself out. When you're married to an addict, it's hard to have positive regard. When you're gaslighted, manipulated, and you're going through all of that, it's hard to stop and really see the good. But I would really encourage you to see both. See the things that aren't working. Like really, those do not work. I'm not going to be in denial, but also see the good. And if you see the good, then it's what you said earlier, Ashlynn. If you're grounded in that reality, then you can make good decisions moving forward. And it really helps. So this is totally from left field. But something that helps with this, so you don't get caught in these silos or you don't have monochrome perspective. It's all about figuring out and understanding where your narrative is filling in the gaps for you. So it's what is reality versus what is the reality that you're making up because of your biases. And something that helps tremendously with this is simple mindfulness practice. Because you ground yourself in reality, in the present. You notice your narratives coming in and trying to take over. And as you notice those things, you watch them float away and you get grounded back in reality again. And I know you guys have done mindfulness courses and practiced it, but that is a tool that helps you take control of your mind rather than your mind taking control of you.
Yep.
Well said. Very well said. Yeah, this is a pretty slippery slope and can be really detrimental if it's not watched. And so, this goes back to, I think, making certain that in your own recovery that you that you have people who are committed to speaking truth, validating, and stretching you. I think it's also important that you ask for that, and that you ask for reality for what it is, and that you remember that as much as you're hurt, or as much as you have hurt, you aren't the betrayal that you have perpetrated, and you aren't the betrayal that you feel. Those are not labels. Those
They
are
don't
things
define you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right, Coby.
Well said. Well said. Well, you guys, thanks for listening today. And we know that the audio is very different from how it normally is. We apologize. Again, we've had Wi-Fi and connectivity issues today, but appreciate you being here, and have a good day.
Have a good one, guys. We'll see you.
Bye-bye.